Week 14, the last week before finals week. This week we'll be talking about war and peace in social psychology, although we'll be focusing on the peace component. We already talked about aggression and conflict in some previous weeks. I have one brief announcement. Course evaluations are available. You should be getting an email invitation to fill those out. Please do fill out the course evaluation for this course by the end of this week or next week. I would love to hear your feedback, to know how things went for you, what suggestions you have for the future, anything that you particularly liked or disliked, any and all feedback that you have, I would love to get. I will be starting with week 13 activity feedback and also some week 12 to catch up. And then I'll do a brief introduction to modules 30 and 31, and then I will talk about week 14 activities. You did an excellent job on quiz 10, which was for last week. The week before, you turned in your group project paper rough drafts and submitted reflective writing number 5. I returned your paper drafts to you with comments on them on Saturday, and I wanted to comment on the spelling and grammar. I had to make very few suggestions for editing, spelling, and grammar, so great job there. I was able to focus my feedback on the flow of your paper and tips for presenting results in the results section. You also did an excellent job on reflective writing 5. A number of you mentioned not wanting to admit that you had implicit biases, and I just wanted to reassure you that you're not alone. Most of us have them, and the key is just to become aware of what biases you do have so you can be intentional in your behavior. If you're aware of your implicit biases, then you can consciously behave in a non-biased way. And I thought you might be curious to see how the class's implicit biases were distributed, so I compiled the results for the Gender Career IAT and the Skin Color Preference IAT. Your results are in the black and orange figure, and the typical distribution of results is in the small white figure. As you can see, this class tended to fall more in the middle, toward the little to no preference or the slight automatic association between gender and career. So not only are you explicitly unbiased, as you have expressed to me in your reflective writings and other writings that you've done, you are also more implicitly unbiased than average. So you can give yourself a little pat on the back for that. When we go to the skin color IAT, we see a similar pattern. So compared to the average respondent, who is equally likely to have a strong or a moderate preference for light skin compared to dark skin, as a class, you are more likely to report having little to no preference for a particular skin tone. So once again, you're less implicitly biased than the general population. And many of you mentioned wanting to reduce your implicit biases. I posted a couple resources in week 14 that give some good tips for easy cognitive exercises that you can use to reduce your implicit biases. So even if you don't have time in the next week or two to check them out, I'd suggest downloading them to check them out later. So they're not required reading for this coming week, but they would be very useful for your life in general past college. This week, week 14, is brought to you by a Fred Rogers quote that you might have heard. When I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, "Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping." The quote encourages you to look on the bright side of life. You may always find people helping, but it's more rare to always find everyone helping. So Module 30 helps shed some light on reasons why some people are more inclined to help than others. The book describes some explanations for why people help. The first one, altruism, is defined as the opposite of selfishness. It's the drive to help others with no thought to your own well-being. You aren't in it for the reward, even if that reward is a warm fuzzy, feeling good about helping. Social exchange theory says we help others after weighing the costs, any potential harm that we might incur as a result of helping or a loss of time or money, and we weigh the benefits, what we get in return. If the benefits outweigh the costs, we'll decide to help. The reciprocity norm, one of our social norms, explains why we feel guilty when someone buys us a gift and we haven't gotten them one in return. We feel socially obligated to help others after they've helped us. They actually referred to this in a Big Bang Theory episode where Sheldon was explained to Sheldon that he needed to buy a gift to reciprocate. We also feel socially obligated to help others after they've helped us, even if this help could be defined by money, lending money to somebody, doing somebody a favor, or giving someone an invitation. When others aren't capable of reciprocating, we still feel a social responsibility norm, which is the drive to help others who can't help themselves. This would help explain why people donate to charities or volunteer for things like Habitat for Humanity or Meals on Wheels. When you're reading through the rest of Module 30, make a note of the personality and environmental factors that influence people's likelihood of helping. The book also describes the influence of bystanders, or a group of strangers. As you're reading this section, think how it relates to attribution theory, whether we attribute other people's behavior to their disposition or personality, or to situational influences. This effect is conveniently called the bystander effect, the idea that when you're in a group of people and you're in a situation that's ambiguous, it's not clearly an emergency, so you're not sure, you're less likely to help than when you're by yourself. Figure 30-1 in the textbook displays 3 factors that influence when and if people will help. Make a note of those 3 factors and try to think of a situation that could illustrate them. Moving on to Module 31. Module 31 takes some of the research on helping and applies it to environmentalism. It's important to know what motivates people to help when you're talking about things that could impact the entire globe. I posted some links on Scholar that help visualize evidence that is accumulated to support global climate change. Psychologists are applying their knowledge and skills to determine how we can motivate people to take action. When climate change affects our environment, as shown in the comments section of the second URL I posted, you end up with a reduction in resources. There's less land for people to live on, so people are displaced. And for countries with fewer resources, there's a loss in agriculture, available food, and medical care that can result in hunger, starvation, and disease epidemics. Before we learn how to motivate people to act, we have to understand how they currently feel. The book mentions a study by the Pew Research Foundation that shows the U.S. as less favorable toward paying high energy prices to address global climate change. The image on the right of the slide is taken from their report, and the link is to the right of the image. As you can see, the U.S. feels similarly as France, Russia, Jordan, Egypt, Indonesia, Mexico, and Nigeria. On the other hand, China, India, Turkey, and South Korea are very willing to pay more. Read through the sections on pages 402 and 403 in the textbook that explain why U.S. citizens are less favorable compared to countries in South and Southeast Asia. Some of you may have watched Bill Nye videos in science class before you came to Simpson, so it probably won't surprise you to learn that Bill Nye is a huge proponent of renewable energies like solar power and wind power. He started a new show on Netflix where he encourages young scientists to change the world by continuing to engineer economically competitive renewable energy sources. Some of the new technologies that have already been developed are energy-efficient light bulbs, cars that give more miles to the gallon of gasoline, and compostable plastics. Another component for a sustainable future is reducing consumption. Some federal incentive programs, like the Energy Star light bulb program, encourage people, whether they are homeowners or renters, to purchase Energy Star light bulbs to be eligible for a refund of up to $100. Not only do people get a refund, they also save money on their energy bills because they consume less energy. Branding environmentally friendly products, like a Prius hybrid car that gets over 50 miles to the gallon of gasoline, encourages people to adopt the social identity of being environmentally conscious. As you read through the section on social psychology of materialism and wealth, think about how it relates to sustainability. The book discusses 6 ways we can do what's called cognitive reappraisal, to think about our lives in a new way. These 6 things reorient our priorities towards things that have been shown to be truly related to quality of life and happiness. 1, downward social comparison, encourages you to compare yourself to people who are less well off. Maybe people who can't count on their next meal. Personally, when I was feeling down about not getting a job right after graduation, I was listening to the radio, and they were interviewing a man who had moved to a larger village in Africa for a better paying job. He hoped to save up for about the next decade or so to be able to go to college. And it definitely put my own struggles in perspective. We tend to take what we do have for granted, and it's easy to focus on what others have and what we don't have. Other factors that contribute to a better quality of life are close supportive relationships, communities where you share beliefs with others like a community of faith, being more optimistic than pessimistic, spending time in nature, and experiencing the state of flow. The Japanese have known for a long time that spending time in nature is beneficial. They have a concept called forest bathing. You should check it out the next time you're Googling something. And you may or may not have talked about flow in your earlier classes. Flow is the state where you get lost in a task. It could be something at work, or it could be a hobby. Maybe you lose track of time while you're playing video games, or while you're knitting a scarf, or you might get lost in a good book. Having more of these types of experiences are associated with having a better quality of life. So think about which of those factors you currently have in your life, and how you could tweak your daily activities to incorporate more of the ones that you don't have. For this week, review the feedback on your individual and group activities from the past couple weeks. Read through modules 30 and 31. And the two things that are required for this week are the group project paper and the group project presentation, both of which are due Sunday at midnight. You can make the final edits on your group project paper and submit it, and then using your paper as a resource, create your group project presentation. And refer to the hints that I gave in earlier instructional videos for tips on how to do that. The two optional things are to complete Quiz 11 by Sunday at midnight and to submit Reflective Writing 6 by Sunday at midnight. If you're happy with your current quiz total and your reflective writing total, then you'd be done after you submit the group project paper and presentation. If you would like to bump up your totals a bit, then complete Quiz 11 by Sunday at midnight and Reflective Writing 6 by Sunday at midnight. Reflective Writing 6 asks you to apply the 6 strategies on pages 415 and 416 of the textbook to create a plan for your own future happiness. So that's all for this week. As usual, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email. It has been a lot of fun teaching this class. I hope that you have enjoyed the subject matter and some of the activities that you've done too. I look forward to reading all of your very hard work once you submit your project papers, presentations, and reflective writings. And I will be posting a very brief instructional video towards the beginning of next week. So have a great week, everyone.